Welcome back, everyone. So today's explainer is, well, it's a dark one. We're taking a fascinating, mythic descent into a seriously grim philosophy. We're going to explore celestial law and cosmic punishment, but through this incredibly cynical, ancient lens, one that's just steeped in Enochian philosophy and these super rigid angelic hierarchies. Basically, we're unpacking the architecture of the universe, not as this place of beautiful wonder, but as a vast, mathematical prison. If you're into deep philosophical world-building, Enochian concepts, and exploring the stark difference between temporary suffering and eternal confinement, you are absolutely in for a treat today. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this with a quote from our primary philosophical source, this figure known as the Sapphire Priest. He says, "Welcome, little wanderer, to the place where the light does not merely fade, but utterly fails." Man, that really sets the tone perfectly, doesn't it? We're crossing the maps of the known world into this chaotic, empty waste at the absolute edge of existence. The priest is welcoming us to a place of ultimate finality, and he's going to act as our guide through the literal architecture of a cosmic prison.
Section 1. The Edge of Existence, a Cosmic Prison.
Right off the bat, our source material just completely strips away any illusion of heavenly wonders. You know those great armories of lightning you might picture when you think of the cosmos? Yeah, those weren't built for admiration. They were built for containment. To really understand this gilded cage, we need to look at the philology of the ancient texts. See, they don't describe a set of rules written down on parchment or stone. They describe what they call the primordial order as a rigid cosmic rhythm. It's an Enochian architecture that is so absolute it doesn't even need a king. The law itself occupies the throne. It just dispenses justice mechanically, like a cold, undeniable fact of reality.
Section 2. The Mercy of Fire, 10,000 Hells.
And this brilliantly illustrates the bizarre, highly cynical perspective of our guide as we go deeper into these fiery pits. On the left side here, we have the fiery voices. These are the literal screams of fallen stars, basically mourning their lost glory. But, and here's the twist, to the priest, this isn't the ultimate suffering. Actually, it's a mercy. Now contrast that with the right side, the sapphire light. This represents the objective, completely indifferent cosmic architecture. It doesn't scream, it doesn't mourn, it just mathematically exists.
And that mathematical existence brings us to a very specific number, 10,000. Those fiery voices we just talked about, they belong to massive burning stars who have been handed a finite sentence of 10,000 years. And through the cynical lens of our priest, this cosmic math is, believe it or not, a blessing. I mean, think about it. These prisoners have a set ledger. They have a finite weight of years that they can literally count, almost like beads on a rosary.
But you might be wondering, what exactly did these stars do to earn a 10,000-year sentence? Well, they committed temporal disobedience. This is absolutely crucial to understand. They didn't try to, destroy the universe or anything. They merely rebelled against the schedule of the heavens. Basically, they missed their appointed times. So because their crime was temporal, just a matter of being late or out of sync, their punishment is also temporal. This is exactly why the priest views these fallen stars as the lucky ones. Their punishment actually has an end date.
So the crucial point here is that the fire is not the worst fate. The priest points out that while you might hear those fiery voices and think they're screaming for forgiveness, they're actually screaming for a boundary, any boundary. In this incredibly cynical philosophy, the fire is a mercy because it provides a sensation. The sheer agony of burning reminds you that you still exist, right? It gives you an existential structure, a solid limit that your mind can actually comprehend.
Section 3. The Empty Sapphire Throne, Absolute Judgment.
So, looking up from those fiery pits toward that unblinking light above, let's walk through this literal ledger of cosmic judgment. Notice the stark contrast here. The origin of the fiery voices comes directly from the prisoners, those fallen stars, whereas the sapphire light originates from the law itself, the throne. The expression of the fire is all about emotional regret and mourning, but the light's expression? Just a cold mathematical justice. The function of the fire is actually a mercy of boundary, giving the stars something real to feel, while the light acts as a silent warning of the law's infinite reach. And finally, look at the penalty. A finite 10,000 years for the voices versus the crushing, sustaining weight of the entire primordial order for the light.
And that brings us to a seriously chilling realization described in the text as the parable of the empty seat. The sapphire throne requires no king, none. The light radiating from it is this silent warning to all celestial ranks that absolutely no one is beyond the law.
The philosophy here is asserting that the greatest power in the universe isn't some ruling entity barking commands. Rather, it is the unbreakable rhythm that remains even when the speaker is entirely silenced.
Section 4. The Math of Undoing. Eternal Judgment.
Now, the Sapphire piece doesn't just rant, he actually teaches the exact mechanisms of this stark, eternal judgment. Let's move to the structural syllabus he uses and see how this builds through what he calls the 5 parables of sapphire light. We just touched on the empty seat, but this expands into the measured hue, which governs those finite sentences we talked about. Then the refracted void, where light itself shatters, the cold armor, revealing the heavens as a cage, and finally, the final ticking. These 5 parables form this incredibly rigid framework that explains the escalation of celestial crimes. And here is exactly how that escalation plays out in real cosmic terms. Step 1 is simple tardiness. Rebelling against the cosmic schedule. Step 2 is the resulting temporal confinement in those fiery pits we discussed. But step 3 is where it gets truly terrifying. It transgression against the fundamental fabric of existence itself. This is a crime far heavier than simple rebellion, and it inevitably leads to step 4, shattering into the eternal aimless void.
Section 5. The Measureless Void, Ultimate Punishment. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how, moving past those burning stars, we're looking at the ultimate punishment reserved for those who break the primordial order. If we dive into the philological roots of the priest's words, the real terror is hidden in that one specific word, measureless. He says, "We are the ink spilled into a measureless pit that has no edges and no end." For Enochian beings who are completely defined by ledgers and mathematical limits, a punishment that lacks a boundary is the absolute ultimate horror. You can't count your years. You can't feel the edges of your cage. You just dissipate.
This exact concept is codified in the parable of the refracted void. In this aimless pit, even that unblinking sapphire light fails. When the light hits the edge of this pit, it just shatters into nothingness because there is literally no fabric of reality left to illuminate. In this space, even the concept of a throne or a ruling language or any kind of authority figure becomes completely obsolete. It is just pure, undefined nothingness.
Section 6. The secret ticking clock, the limit of all things.
Having reached the absolute limit of all celestial maps, the source material leaves us with this incredibly heavy realization. The loss of boundary is the ultimate architecture of the abyss. Think back for a second to those fiery voices. We now fully understand why the fire was truly a mercy. Burning in a pit for 10,000 years, at least it gives you a boundary. It gives you an exit, even if it's way, way off in the future. But an existential sentence without an exit, literally being spilled like ink into a void, that is the true cosmic terror.
I want to leave you to ponder this final, highly provocative question, drawn straight from the priest's diatribe. Is the ultimate terror not the fiery torment, but a law that forgets your name while it continues to count your pulse? It's this dark fable of a universe that values the rigid integrity of its architecture infinitely more than the inhabitants trapped within it. A universe where justice is literally just math, and where eternal aimlessness is the darkest punishment of all. Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating, deeply cynical philosophy with me today. Keep asking the big questions, and I'll see you in the next explainer.